What if I told you that the real danger to your mind isn't what happens in the outside world, but the secret places hidden inside you? Carl Jung believed our minds are filled with landscapes, some bright and life-giving, others dark and destructive. And here's the chilling truth. If you don't recognize these dangerous places, you can get lost in them without even realizing it. That's why today, we're diving into 7 dangerous psychological places Carl Jung warned about. Mental traps that don't just confuse you. They can quietly consume your life. Stay with me until the very end, because the last one is the most haunting, and it might explain struggles you've carried for years without knowing why. And hey, if you find Jung's wisdom as eye-opening as I do, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Each week, we go deep into hidden truths about the mind, the soul, and the strange ways psychology shapes our daily lives. So stick with me. You'll want to hear all 7. Now let's begin with the first and perhaps the most personal of Jung's dangerous places, the shadow's den. The shadow is Jung's term for the hidden side of your personality, the parts of you that you don't want to admit exist. Maybe it's anger, maybe it's envy, maybe it's selfishness. We push these traits down into the dark because we don't like them, or because we fear what others would think if they saw them. But here's the problem. What you bury doesn't disappear. It festers. Think about it. Have you ever met someone who just can't stand liars, yet they twist the truth themselves? Or someone who loudly hates arrogance, but secretly craves admiration? That's the shadow at work. We see in others what we refuse to face in ourselves. The danger here is huge. If you don't confront your shadow, it controls you from the darkness. It makes you lash out, sabotage relationships, or chase goals that don't even belong to you. Jung said it best. Asterisk, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Asterisk. So before we go further, ask yourself, what qualities in other people trigger you the most? Could they be mirrors of your own unacknowledged shadow? Sit with that thought and keep watching, because the next dangerous place is where even the strongest minds get trapped. And remember, if this resonates with you, make sure to subscribe now, because you won't want to miss the rest of this journey into Jung's darkest psychological warnings. Now let's move into the second dangerous place Carl Jung warned about, the inflation trap. If the shadow hides in the dark, inflation is the opposite. It blinds you with too much light. This is when the ego swells, identifying itself with something far bigger than it can handle. Jung described it as ego inflation, the moment someone starts to believe they're not just human, but a hero, a prophet, even a savior. Think about it. Have you ever met someone who suddenly discovers a little bit of spiritual insight, and overnight, they act as if they're above everyone else? They stop listening, they stop learning, because in their mind, they've already arrived. That's inflation at work. History is full of tragic examples. Leaders who believe they embody divine power, cult figures who declare themselves chosen messengers, and charismatic teachers who demanded blind loyalty. All of them inflated by archetypes larger than their fragile human egos could carry. For a while it looks like greatness, but beneath the surface, cracks begin to form. On a smaller scale, we see it today. A person might meditate for a month and suddenly believe they've transcended ordinary people. Or someone achieves a bit of success and starts to treat others like they're insignificant. Inflation feels intoxicating. It gives you the illusion of being untouchable. But here's the danger. What inflates must eventually collapse. And collapse it does. When reality strikes, the fall is devastating. The once enlightened seeker ends up in despair. The self-proclaimed leader loses their followers and faces their emptiness. The person who thought they were invincible meets failure and sinks into depression. Jung understood this pattern well. When the ego tries to carry the weight of the gods, it shatters under the load. So pause for a moment. Where in your own life might you be inflating? Are there moments when you feel secretly above others? If so, remember, true growth is humble. The deeper you go, the less you need to prove. Stay with me, because the next dangerous place is one most of us fall into without even realizing it. It's called the prison of persona. And before we go there, make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. You don't want to miss the next trap Jung believed quietly destroys countless lives. Now we arrive at the third dangerous place in Jung's map of the mind, the prisoner persona. The persona is the mask we wear to face the world, the role we play to be accepted, respected, and even loved. Jung didn't see it as evil. In fact, it's necessary. We all need some kind of mask. Without it, society would collapse into chaos. But here's the trap. When we mistake the mask for our true self, we lock ourselves inside a prison we don't even realize exists. Think about the roles you've played in life. Maybe you've been the good student, the provider, the caretaker, or the strong one. These masks serve a purpose. They help us function in our families, in our jobs, in our communities. But the moment you over-identify with the mask, you begin to lose touch with who you really are. Take the example of a man who sees himself only as the provider. His entire identity is built around earning, protecting, and sacrificing. At first, it seems noble, but deep down, his authentic self, the dreamer, the artist, the friend, remains silenced. Over time, he feels hollow, disconnected, even resentful. Or think about the woman who defines herself only as the caretaker. She pours herself into her family, her job, everyone else's needs. Years pass, and suddenly she wonders, who am I beyond serving others? This is the danger of the persona. The longer you wear it, the more you forget there's a person behind it. And then comes the emptiness, the midlife crisis, the sense that life has passed you by without you ever living it. Burnout, depression, and that haunting question, is this all there is? All stem from being trapped in the mask. Jung warned that the persona is like clothing, useful, protective, but deadly if you mistake it for your own skin. You need the mask, but you are not the mask. So ask yourself, are you living as your authentic self, or just performing a role you learned to play? The answer may reveal how free or how trapped you really are. Stay with me, because the fourth dangerous place is even more unsettling. It's not about who you pretend to be, but about the life you never lived at all. And before we enter it, remember to subscribe, because each of these insights could be the very key you need to break free from the places that quietly destroy the mind. The fourth dangerous place Carl Jung described is one that haunts many people quietly, often surfacing only later in life: the abyss of unlived life. This isn't about what you did wrong. It's about what you never allowed yourself to do at all. Jung believed that when we ignore the unlived parts of ourselves, our talents, our desires, our secret callings, they don't simply vanish. They wait in the dark, building pressure, turning into bitterness and regret. Picture someone who sacrificed every dream for duty. Maybe they wanted to write or travel or build something of their own. But instead, they chose the safe path, always responsible, always meeting others' expectations. On the surface, they seem dependable, even admirable. But as the years pass, something happens. When they see others living freely, laughing, creating, chasing their passions, it stirs anger. Not because those people are wrong, but because deep down, the unlived life is screaming inside them. Jung warned that this buried life doesn't just hurt the individual. It poisons their relationships too. He wrote, nothing has a stronger influence psychologically on their environment, and especially on their children, than the unlived life of the parent. In other words, when you deny your own potential, the people around you feel the weight of that denial. Children pick it up. Spouses feel it. Friends sense it. The danger of the unlived life is that resentment becomes a kind of slow poison. It shows up as constant criticism, envy, or a deep sadness that no achievement can fix. Some people drown in depression. Others lash out in destructive ways, trying to punish the world for the joy they themselves never claimed. So here's the haunting question. What parts of your life have you left unlived? What dreams did you bury so deep you almost forgot them? The good news is it's never too late to answer those callings, even in small ways. Recognizing them can be the first step out of the abyss. Stay with me, because the next dangerous place Jung identified is one that affects almost everyone today. It's not about your personal shadow or hidden dreams. It's about how easily the mind can be swallowed by the crowd. And before we enter it, remember to subscribe if you haven't yet, because each step deeper into Jung's psychology helps us climb out of the traps we never knew we were in. The fifth dangerous place Carl Jung warned about is the swamp of collective thinking. Unlike the personal traps we've explored so far, this one is about what happens when the mind gets swallowed by the crowd. Jung believed the collective unconscious can guide us. It holds the wisdom of shared human experience. But collective thinking is different. It doesn't guide, it enslaves. In collective thinking, individuality disappears. People stop questioning, stop reflecting, and instead, they march to the beat of whatever the group demands. History shows how dangerous this swamp can be. Propaganda turns ordinary people into blind followers. Mob mentality turns neighbors into enemies. Groupthink in politics, religion, or ideology convinces people that cruelty is justice. In these moments, the mind isn't thinking, it's reacting. And this isn't just history. Look around today. Social media outrage storms, online mobs canceling individuals without context, tribes forming and fighting over every opinion. People repeat slogans they barely understand, not because they've thought them through, but because belonging feels safer than standing alone. In the swamp of collective thinking, responsibility is surrendered. People do things they would never do on their own because everyone else is doing it. Jung's warning is clear. When you dissolve into the group, you lose your moral compass. The swamp is seductive because it feels good to belong. But the price is your individuality, your conscience, and your freedom. So ask yourself, are your beliefs truly yours? Or are they borrowed from the crowd? Have you thought them through? Or are you repeating what feels safe? Escaping the swamp means daring to think alone, even when the crowd roars against you. Stay with me, because the next dangerous place is even trickier. It's not about the crowd. It's about ancient forces inside you that can take over your entire identity. And before we step into that territory, make sure you've subscribed. Each insight builds on the last. And the next one reveals why so many people lose themselves without ever realizing it. The sixth dangerous place Jung described is the chaos of archetypal possession. To understand this, we need to revisit Jung's idea of archetypes. Archetypes are universal patterns of the human psyche: the mother, the hero, the trickster, the victim, and many more. They are not good or bad. They're part of the deep structures of the human mind. But here's the danger. When you don't recognize an archetype working in you, it can possess you. Possession looks like this. Someone becomes so identified with one archetype that they lose their individuality. Think of the person who is always the victim. No matter what happens, they find a way to remain powerless, helpless, and dependent. Or the eternal martyr, who sacrifices endlessly, not out of love, but because suffering has become their identity. Then there's the rescuer, the savior who burns themselves out trying to fix everyone else's life. These aren't just roles. They're cages. Jung explained that when an archetype dominates, reality itself gets distorted. The eternal child never grows up. The hero becomes reckless, seeking battles where none exist. The mother smothers with control instead of nurturing with love. When the archetype takes over, people stop seeing clearly. They lose touch with who they really are. The chaos of archetypal possession is subtle because it can feel meaningful. People think they've found their purpose. But in truth, they've been consumed by a psychic pattern older than themselves. And breaking free requires self-awareness, the courage to ask, is this really me, or am I trapped in a story that isn't mine? So reflect for a moment. Which archetypes might be living through? The victim? The rescuer? The hero? Recognizing them is the first step toward freedom. And don't go anywhere, because the final dangerous place Jung revealed is the most haunting of them all. The moment when the unconscious doesn't whisper, but floods your entire mind. Before we enter it, make sure you've subscribed, because this last one ties everything together in a way you won't want to miss. The seventh and final dangerous place Jung warned about is the realm of the unconscious flood. To Jung, the unconscious was like an ocean, vast, mysterious, and filled with both treasure and danger. It carries creativity, wisdom, and archetypal truths. But like the sea, it can also overwhelm, drowning anyone who ventures too deep without preparation. When the unconscious floods the conscious mind, it doesn't arrive gently. It surges. People may be overtaken by vivid hallucinations, obsessive thoughts, or waves of paranoia. Dreams can become so powerful they invade waking life. Fantasies may blur into reality. In extreme cases, this flood becomes psychosis, where the boundary between the inner world and the outer world dissolves completely. Imagine living in a state where every symbol feels like a personal message, every coincidence feels like destiny, and every thought grows louder than reality itself. At first, it may feel mystical or even divine, but soon it becomes terrifying. The flood doesn't just inspire, it erases the ground beneath your feet. The danger here is total disconnection from reality. When the unconscious dominates, daily life becomes impossible. Relationships collapse, responsibilities are abandoned, and the person becomes lost in inner storms no one else can see. Jung believed the goal was never to suppress the unconscious, nor to surrender fully to it. Instead, he urged balance. The conscious and the unconscious must be in dialogue, not in war. Dreams, symbols, and instincts have wisdom to offer, but they must be integrated carefully, anchored by reason and awareness. Without that anchor, the unconscious isn't a guide. It's a flood that destroys. So the final question is this: are you listening to your unconscious in balance, or are you letting it carry you away? Recognizing the difference may be the key to keeping your mind intact. And now, let's gather everything we've explored into a closing reflection you won't want to miss. We've traveled through 7 dangerous psychological places Carl Jung warned about: the shadow's den, the inflation trap, the prison of persona, the abyss of unlived life, the swamp of collective thinking, the chaos of archetypal possession, and finally, the realm of the unconscious flood. Notice something. None of these places exist outside of us. They aren't enemies in the world. They live in our own minds. That's why they're so dangerous. You can't run from them, because they move with you. But here's the good news. Awareness itself is protection. Jung didn't warn us to fear the mind, but to know it. Once you see these traps, you're less likely to fall into them. So let me ask, out of these 7, which one do you feel you've struggled with the most? The shadow? The mask of persona? The weight of unlived life? Share your thoughts in the comments, because your story might be the very reflection someone else needs to hear. And if this journey opened your eyes, don't leave without subscribing. Each week, we uncover Jung's insights, practical, mysterious, and sometimes even dangerous, so you can understand yourself more deeply and live more freely. Remember this as we close. Your mind can be your greatest destroyer or your greatest liberator. The difference isn't luck. The difference is awareness. So stay curious, stay awake, and until next time, take care of your mind, because it's the place you live every day.